Okay, it is 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, to be clear, since one of our panelists is not on Eastern Standard Time. So it is 11 o'clock here, 8 a.m. where Ashley is. I am going to get started to be respectful of everybody's time. We have an exciting panel today, and I want to dive right in and make sure that we are giving the topic as much time as possible. So for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Diane Meehan. I am the Director of Business Development with Pepper Lane. Pepper Lane, for those of you who might not know us, Pepper Lane's a place where mothers build businesses for themselves, but not by themselves. Today, we are presenting a panel to help you nail your next sales conversation. We know that sales can be uncomfortable and challenging for a lot of business owners, and we want to make sure that we're equipping our small business owners with the confidence in their value and the comfort level to be able to go forward and communicate your value to prospective customers. So we have invited two of our Pepper Lane members who are our resident experts, Liz Wolfe, who is a business and finance coach, and Ashley Harwood, who specializes in introvert sales strategy, to share their top tips and strategies to setting yourself up for success and closing more customers. So what I'm going to do is just give you a quick overview of both Liz and Ashley. Liz is of Liz Wolfe Coaching. She's an entrepreneur and sales coach. She helps overwhelmed entrepreneurs get unstuck so they can take action with confidence and create an abundant business. Ashley Harwood is the sales strategist for introverted entrepreneurs and the founder of Move Over Extroverts. Through her own experience as an introverted realtor, Ashley discovered that much of what worked for others in her office did not work for her. So first, we are going to invite Liz to speak about the fears surrounding selling. She will present her point of view. We're then going to turn it over to Ashley to give us some really concrete strategies of how to build a sales pitch that works for you. And then we are going to open it up to questions. Many participants submitted questions to the panel beforehand, so we're going to answer those questions first. I do encourage all of the attendees to drop questions into the chat if you have them. And Rachel Moyer, who's our community member manager, will be collecting all of those questions and sending them to me, and we will address them as time permits to Liz and Ashley. And Liz, that we do end up wrapping up by about 11:45. So I am going to turn this over to Liz.
Well, thank you so much, Diane, and welcome to everybody who is on. I'm seeing some familiar names in there as well. I'm so grateful that you have come on, and I'm excited to share this information as I am to hear from Ashley as well. And I want to welcome you for coming on. So as Diane said, I'm a sales and entrepreneur coach. And the first thing that I want everybody to know about me is that I grew up on a sheep farm. So if you don't get the joke right away, just want to point out that my last name is Wolfe and I grew up on a sheep farm. And why that's significant is because that is where I first learned about being an entrepreneur. So from a very young age, I spent a lot of hours selling what we made on the farm, really basically for survival. So what I did was I took all of that information that I learned and the various businesses that I started and failed early on in my career, and I put together what I would say, excuse me, are the 5 biggest fears that we have of selling that I've noticed. And the first fear and the number 1 fear of those 5 fears, and by the way, I have a PDF on my website that you can download, and it talks about all 5 fears, which I wish we had time to talk about today, but we don't. But the number 1 fear that we have of selling is going to sound super, super obvious, which is we're afraid that people will say no to our offer. And that would mean that presumably, we'd be very disappointed in that, because we may have put any amount of effort into either getting that lead, cultivating that lead, cultivating the relationship, And for some of us, selling is actually something that we need to do in order to pay our bills and to be able to keep our businesses afloat. So it feels like we have all this riding on, I've got to sell my product, I've got to sell my service. And if they say no, that means basically that I won't be able to get the sale and my business won't be prosperous. So I want you to imagine for a moment that you are independently wealthy, that you already have a full client load and this person is begging you to have you work with them, or that in your heart, because I know that sometimes this is true, that the client that you're talking to or the prospect you're talking to isn't actually right for you, because maybe you were like, well, maybe I could sell them, etc. So if they were saying no in any of those previous scenarios where you really didn't care because you didn't need the money or you knew they weren't right for you, you wouldn't care. You would be like, okay, that's fine. It wouldn't impact you. However, usually if we are selling, that's actually not true. So most of us aren't independently wealthy yet, and most of us very much would want this sale. So we have this thing and they say no. Now, the real problem, by the way, isn't that they're saying no. The real problem with the fact that they said no is that we make the no mean something. We make it mean something, okay? And what that means, in the next slide will say, the number one thing that we make it seem, Diane, you're going to move to the next slide, if you can. Is we are afraid that this no means rejection. So we make it mean that they're rejecting us. And the problem is that we don't think of it as that they are rejecting our product. We think literally that they are rejecting us. And why does that matter? Because we think that rejection is a reflection of us, which means that it means something about us, like we're not good enough, there's some problem with us. And just like that, in 2 seconds, we've time traveled back to middle school. And so we avoid making the ask for the sale because we don't want to hear that no. So sometimes what we're doing is we're hoping that people are just going to say yes on their own, or they're just going to opt in. And this is one of the things that I hear from entrepreneurs all the time as I'm coaching them. How can I make my sales organic? How can I get it so that people are just referring people to me and they just come to me naturally and they just flow to me? And I'm sure there are many ways to do that. That's certainly something that I want as well. However, I would say that you are going to need to ask people, and they're probably going to say no. And that's because if you want your business to be successful, that you have to expect that. So if we stop making the no mean that they are rejecting us, if we stop making the no mean that it means something about us, then we could take a look to see, well, what might that no mean? What I'm trying to do here is depersonalize it, take the energy and fear and the resistance we have to the no. I want to take that out, and I want to look at some things that no might really mean. So number one thing that no really mean is, I don't see the value. Now I want you to think for yourself. Do you buy something if you don't see the value of it? Probably not. So what does that mean? That means that I have a problem, and I believe that your product, or however you want to phrase that, your product will solve my problem. And if I don't think that your product will solve my problem, I'm not going to buy it from you. I don't see the value. Now, we don't even need to go through all the rest of them. All I have to say is, and I will, but all I have to say is, if I don't see the value, I'm not going to buy it. Okay? People do not do what they don't want to do. Ever wonder why you don't do stuff? It's because you don't want to do it. Okay. Now, related to that is, I just don't have enough information to be able to make a choice. So maybe you haven't been clear about the details of the benefits of your product and how it can help them. Or maybe they have questions that haven't been answered yet. Or maybe they're confused. Well, how does this work? And so I like to always say the best sales technique is to ask questions. Ask people what matters to them and what value they would see, what problems they have. Stop talking about yourself and your product and start looking to see what problems could you solve for this person. So once they have enough information, they'll be more likely to see the value. And again, related to this is, I don't know, is this going to work for me? Why would I buy something if I don't think this is going to work for me? So here's the thing. It's not about you. We've already determined that. It's not about what you're selling. It's about a match. It's about a match between you, what you're selling, and the customer. All three of those things have to come together. So selling is really about asking people to decide whether or not your product is right for them and will work for them. So focus on them and whether it's a good match. And if you do this, you will have very happy customers because they will want what it is that you're providing to them. Okay, and probably they may not have the money, they may not have the time, so they might need to work through some things. So that has nothing to do with me. You go work out your issues with your money and time. Now, if they see the value, they will create the money and time. But if they don't have the money and time, it's not about you. And then finally, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready now. So I have a philosophy that whenever anyone says no to me, I just assume that they're saying no for now. I have people that come to my workshops and webinars, and they're on my mailing list for years. And I just keep asking, would you like to participate now? Would you like to participate now? And until someone either unsubscribes or says, don't ever contact me again, I assume they're just not ready for now. Okay, so now I want to talk about, first of all, the first strategy for overcoming this fear is take it away from meaning about you, okay? And then now I want you to say, okay, I'm going to put myself in the game. I'm going to start doing sales. How should I do that? How can I overcome the fear? Well, first of all, I want you to start small. And what I mean by that is maybe you're just going to go to networking events and talk to people. And don't try to sell them anything at all. Of course, we can't really go to networking events right now, but maybe find something online. Maybe just get into conversations with them. Practice saying your elevator speech. Don't try to sell anyone. The other thing about this that I love to do, one of the reasons why I love to have webinars and things like that, is because if I do something that's free that I can invite people to, it's much easier for me to call them or invite them. There's no, but hey, come, it's free, right? And then the second tip is practice, practice, practice. So I spent years going to networking events, just practicing saying my elevator pitch until I saw that it resonated with people. I just picture that, actually I took this picture that I put on my own phone because I saw it online. I thought it was amazing, right? Pick me up, I make you money. Talk to people, practice. The more you practice, just like anything else, the more you will feel comfortable with talking about your services, connecting with people, and finding out to see whether you are a match for that person, for that sale. So those are my main tips. Of course, I've just only just started on the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of ways in which fears will interfere in selling. So I welcome you to follow up and read my PDF with the rest of the fears on it. And I'm complete. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Liz. I really liked hearing about your concrete steps on how to think about overcoming those fears. Now we'd like to pivot over to Ashley Harwood, who is going to speak to us about how to actually implement some strategies. Ashley?
Let me unmute myself. That would help. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm so happy to be here. Sorry, I'm on my phone, so it's a little wonky. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ashley Harwood. I am the sales strategist for introverts. That is my specialty, specifically business owners. So I work with people who identify as introverts. We get our energy from being alone, and certain sales tactics that work for a lot of our colleagues might not work for us. So today we're going to talk a little bit about sales strategy, and thank you, Liz, for your insight into the mindset piece. I think that's a really important setup to really dive into some strategy, because if the mindset piece isn't there, you know, it's gonna screw up any activity that you're trying to do, right? So let's go to then the next slide here. So we're going to be talking about matching your sales strategy to your personality and also to your lifestyle. So again, tip of the iceberg for me as well. We're just going to talk a little bit about sales strategy. Do you hate sales? Like, is that word super cringy? I know for a lot of us it is. Whether or not you're an introvert, like, sales can feel really icky for a lot of people. And it's because a lot of times we don't want the rejection. We have the fear of rejection. We don't want to be annoying to people. So if that is resonating with you, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't move forward and continue going down the path of building your business. You might just need to shift your strategy and pick something else that isn't so cringy. If the phone is weighing 1,000 pounds, maybe the phone isn't the right strategy for you. If a networking event sounds fun, maybe that is a good strategy for you, or vice versa. Maybe the phone is much more appealing than being in person with people. Maybe it's social media. It doesn't entirely matter what the tactic is, what the strategy is. What matters is that you're enjoying it, and so you'll do more of it. So this is very broad, very high level. Perfect, thank you. Almost anything can be turned into a sales strategy if you create a system around it and do it consistently. So I say almost anything because it has to, oops, I'm gonna drop my phone, that's helpful. It can't be sitting on the couch watching Netflix. That's not going to get you sales, okay? It has to be something that involves other people somehow communicating, either online or in person or by the phone or whatever. It has to be that two-way communication, right? But there are so many things. There are hundreds of things. In fact, I have a list of about 80 plus different strategies for creating leads, for creating sales. And shoot me an email, I'll send you the list. Like, there are so many different tactics, and it does take some trial and error to find which one you like. But start with what sounds fun to you. Start there, because then you'll be more inclined to do more of it, and you'll be consistent. So the key is choose a strategy and then implement a system consistently. It can't be a one-off. It can't be, I'm going to try this for a week and I don't see anything happening, so I'm going to give up on it. It does involve some commitment and some time and that consistency. Now, that being said, I'll give you an example from my career in real estate. I was doing a lot of cold calling my first year and a half, because that's what I was taught to do. That's what a lot of very successful real estate agents do. They pick up the phone, they call for sale by owners, they call expired listings. And I was given scripts, I took training classes on how to do this, and I was all excited, and I hated every second of it. And it didn't work for me. I wasn't able to convert. And so I stuck with it probably longer than I should have. But it was awful. And at the same time I was doing that, I was going to networking events in the evening, and those were what I really enjoyed. So I finally got to a point where I realized, okay, the thing that's actually working for me is these networking events, and the thing that's not working for me, and I'm hating every second of it, is the cold calling. So I let go of the cold calling piece, but then I had to backfill my time and make sure that I was more consistent with the networking events. It couldn't be just one a week. It had to be, almost one a day for a while for me in my business. So that's an example of taking something that you really like, leaning into it, creating a system, and then that consistency will produce the results. Cool, let's go to the next slide. So how to decide which strategy is best for you. 3 things. Consider your personality and energy. And so if you are more extroverted, you probably get your energy from being around other people. So take that into account. If you're more introverted, you probably get your energy from being alone, which doesn't mean you should avoid people, because you can't. Business owners, we can't avoid people. It just means that you'll need to kind of tweak how you spend your energy resources and be more purposeful about them. So if you're going to go to a big networking event with 200 people someday when the world's open again, then you'll need to make sure that you have plenty of time before and after to recharge your batteries and make sure that your energy level is high enough for that event. Number 2, what are your hobbies and interests? What do you like doing? What are you doing anyway? That's number 3. But what is something that's a hobby of yours that you want to spend time doing? And can you turn that into a sales strategy? Like maybe you want to, learn how to arrange flowers or take a cooking class or something that just sounds really fun. Are there going to be other people there? How can you go into that with the intention not of making sales, but of building relationships and meeting new people? And then, maybe the goal is to click with 1 or 2 people and then follow up with them and have coffee and get to know them and ask, how can I help you in your business? And then they'll ask you the same question. So starting with things that you're already interested in will help you to do it more consistently because it's going to be fun. And then number 3, where are you going to be talking to people anyway? The best example of this is things around your children's activities. Where are other parents? Where are groups of people that you need to be at anyway? Like sports games and plays and concerts and things, again, once the world is normal again. You can use those opportunities to, it's kind of a 2 birds, 1 stone situation, right? It's a leveraging of your time to not add more things to your plate, but see what's already on your plate and how can I tweak it and be a little more purposeful in building relationships. And it does have to come from that relationship mindset. It cannot come from how am I going to make a sale at this event. That's gonna blow up real fast. All right, I think next slide, please. This is our last slide. So my question for you to think about and maybe do some journaling around is, if you could do any activity and make all the money you wanted, what would it be? On this other column here, there are some examples from the real estate world. Some of them might not apply, but just to help jog your memory and give you some ideas, maybe make a list like this. Make a list of all the activities that sound fun to you. Hobbies, interests, places you're going to be anyway. Look at the calendar. Where are you going to be where there are other people? Virtually or not. And then, pick one and see how can I create a system around it. And that'll be your strategy. And the system just needs to be, it can be very simple. It needs to be tied to specific data. So like how many times are you going to be at this one place or event? How many people are you planning to talk to? How many are you going to follow up with? So put some numbers around it, but keep it very realistic so it's doable. That's another whole topic, goal setting. But a lot of times I see people have these really large, big goals and they're not really realistic. And then they don't, I've done this myself too. And then I don't even come close to hitting it. And then I feel like a complete failure. So start smaller, get that win, and then that'll propel you to do the next thing. All right, so that's pretty much all I have. I don't think there are any other slides for me. Yeah, questions?
Great. Thank you so much, Ashley. I really appreciated hearing from your perspective. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to dive into some of the questions that our participants have been asking. And I will tell you, we have so many questions. We received a significant list of questions that people submitted beforehand. We're going to dive into some of those. And then I am going to open it up to questions that our active participants are posting in the chat. So our first question that I will offer to you two is best techniques to gain rapport virtually or over the phone. Liz, would you like to dive into that?
Best techniques for creating rapport, either personally or on the phone? Okay, I think I could answer that pretty simply. One is care about them more than you care about selling to them. That's for one thing. You know, and be authentic. I think one of the challenges that I ran into early on in my business or throughout my business would be what we often do, which is compare ourselves to other people. And when we compare ourselves to other people, what we end up doing is we try to be like them, which means we often come off looking inauthentic. So I think the most important thing to do in creating rapport with somebody is ask questions, care about them more than you care about selling to them, and be authentic.
That's great. Thanks, Liz. Ashley, I'm going to direct this question to you. When following up with leads, what's the right cadence? How often is too often?
That's a good question. It depends on the type of lead and how you left things off at the last conversation. But in general, I would say, as a very broad stroke, I'd say maybe once or twice a month is a good general rule. If you don't know if someone's interested or not, if they've raised their hand and said, I am interested, then the lead follow-up should be much more frequent. So it kind of depends on the situation, but if it's more of a cold lead, I would say maybe once or twice a month. If it's a really warm or hot lead, maybe, you know, once or twice a week, depending. And ask questions too, gauge their interest. Say, when would you like me to check in with you again? And let them direct it.
This is actually a great segue into one of our other questions that was posted. And actually, I would say several people posted a variation of this question, which is, what language can people use for a follow-up? And one of them specifically said, I hate just checking in. Liz, do you want to speak to some language options for follow-ups?
Sure. And I also see Christine has asked, you know, how would you follow up if someone says, I will think about it and get back to you, besides just following up with an email? So I was pondering that when you asked this question. Hi, how are you? So the last time we spoke, you were interested in learning more about my products, and now I'm calling you back to see if you're still interested. I think one of the things we try to do is we try to be like, hey, you know, all chummy, or just, we do not like to be salesy. And so we don't want to make it seem like we're selling. There's a problem. We are selling. So if you're selling, use I don't think we can be bold enough. I'm checking back with you because you said you were interested. Like Christine said, how would you follow up if someone says, I will think about it and get back to you? When would you like me to follow up with you again? When and how would you like me to follow up with you? And I think sometimes I feel like I don't want to be pushy, so let me not ask so directly what you want me to do to follow up. And then we don't know how to follow up. We're like, hey, just checking back. Like, rather than, remember you told me you wanted me to talk to you this week. You said you would know by this week, or you wanted me to follow up. How's it going? Have you thought about it more? Yeah.
Great. Another question regarding the language that we use. Ashley, what is the right language to use when you're pivoting from displaying your value to actually asking for the sale? Do you have any thoughts there?
I have struggled with this myself because there's a lot of language that is really common and sounds super salesy and annoying. Like, if you like this, check this out. That's dumb. We don't want to say that. So what I might say instead is, hey, listen, if you found this valuable, well, not if, did you find this valuable? Okay, I have here's the next step. And kind of frame it as it's a sequence. The freebie is the first step. If you found it valuable, here's the next step. If you want more, here's the next step. Depending on what you're selling and how many different tiers there are, you can kind of move people through the tiers and use language around this tier is good for this type of person in this situation. This tier is the next level for this type of person in this kind of situation. And put that all out there, and then let them put themselves in the appropriate bucket.
Great, thank you. Another question, how do you calibrate being direct versus subtle in your approach? Do either of you have a thought on that?
How do you calibrate being direct versus subtle?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I 100% understand the question, but I would say this: it sounds very calculating. Like, should I be direct? Should I be subtle? Should I act like I don't care? Should I pretend everything's like? There's also all these ways. There's all these strategies and ways that we're thinking. What's the best way? And I think it's going to change based on. If you're asking questions and you're listening to what people are saying, then I think that you will know that. The other thing that comes up for me when you say that is, if I'm asking somebody for the sale, I don't know what other way to do it than be direct. Like, again, this goes back to, well, I don't want to be in their face. I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to make it seem like I'm being pushy. So that would be my thought. I'm not sure, Ashley, if you have more on that.
Sure. My thought around this is making a joke of it can be really helpful sometimes, breaking the ice and just laying it out there with people and saying, listen, I don't want to bother you if you're not interested. Please just tell me. If you're not interested, you'll never hear from me again. I've said that to people before too. If you already have a real estate agent that you like, please tell me, and I'll take you off my list. No worries. I don't want to waste your time. And so if you just kind of put it out there, a lot of times people laugh, it'll break the ice, and then you don't have to worry as much about it. And then you can gauge their reaction.
Great, thank you. This question is related to the mindset of value. We actually have several questions about pricing related to value and selling services related to value, so I'm trying to condense into a couple. This one is specific. I have difficulty selling my counseling services because currently I don't accept insurance. How do I highlight that I'm a good choice when we're in a recession and I'm self-pay only? I know this is it's a very specific and tricky question. I will put it to you guys. I will also say that if you don't feel like you have the answers right now, you're also welcome to say that you're happy to kind of think through it and we can get back to the person who asked it. But in case either of you would like to speak to it now, I wanted to put it out there.
One quick thing I want to jump in and say, I heard the words, because it's a recession. And what I hear in that is, and so I'm afraid people don't have money and I don't want to ask them for it. And so that you want to be careful that you're not putting considerations on people that they don't have. There's a lot of people out there that have a lot of money that want to give it to you. That's the theory I work on, right? A lot of people out there, millions, 7 billion people on this planet. A lot of them have money and a lot of them want to give it to you. So I don't want to focus on that recession part. I want to just focus on what's the value that I offer. And all I've ever heard about accepting insurance is it's a pain in the butt. So I don't even want to do that. I want full paying clients who recognize my value because they understand there's value there.
Yeah, I agree. It comes down to the value that you bring. I've heard this before, I did not make this up. In the absence of value, that's when price becomes an issue. If there's enough value there, the price isn't even an issue. People will find the money and it will be worth it. So it might be a combination of working more through referrals and also getting really clear on your differentiator and being able to express that.
Yep,
and I agree, insurance is a pain in the butt.
It sure is in so many levels. And we do talk about that a lot at our Pepper Lane boosts. We talk a lot about really helping people get centered in feeling confident about the value that they're providing and how to be able to speak to that. Okay, a question from Katie. I feel like my sales calls are unstructured. I talk with the client about the offer and then at the end tell them the price. I'm wondering if that is too simplistic and if there are techniques or questions I can be asking to increase my conversion rate. Liz, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, sure do. If people aren't feeling any pain, they're probably not going to buy your service because you're solving a problem for them. So there is, if we take it out of, if we could just talk facts about selling and what works and not be worried about, how I feel in this moment, I would just say that what we're doing on sales conversations is, number one, we're finding out what they want, what's their vision. Then we're finding out what the gap is. What's in between them and actually having that vision. Is it clear skin? Is it a healthy body? Is it money coming into their account? I'm just trying to think of various things you might be selling, right? And so is it, they're depressed if you're doing counseling services, whatever that is. So they recognize the gap and then they have to believe that you can help them to solve that problem. And that's done through the old know, like, and trust. They know your work, they like you, and they trust that you can provide that. So it's not so much a technique. Again, I go back to listening. Don't try to solve a problem somebody doesn't have because they won't be interested. Listen to find out what are the problems that you are solving for people, and then create the gap and then have them see that, oh, but if I work with you, I can solve that problem.
Great, thank you. We have another question. We have about 4 minutes left for questions. From Amy, fear and dislike aside, I'm wondering if cold calling even works today. Do people really answer the phone? If so, do they engage? Do they ever return a call in response to a voice message? These are such legitimate questions. And if yes, to what extent is there a return on investment, generally speaking? Do either of you want to jump in on that question?
Yeah, I can take this question to start. It depends on the industry, especially when it comes to the return on investment question. You know, if you're selling something that's a very low price point versus a house, very different commissions there. So I would say that yes, it does work still. There are a lot of people who do it very successfully at a high level, and if it's something that sounds interesting to you, like it's worth a shot, because if you're good at it, you can potentially make a lot of money. But if you hate every second of your life doing it, it's not worth it. So it does work. There are people in that cold calling kind of world, the ones who are good at it, who have been incorporating more cold texting as well. There are now programs you can buy that send out auto blast text. I'm sure we've all been on the receiving ends of some of those before. So there are a few pivots, but old school cold calling, it does work for some people in some industries.
Liz, did you want to say anything about that?
I want to add to that to say, great question. And it must work, otherwise people wouldn't be doing it. It's a numbers game, right? It's really picking up the phone. So that's true also. And I would also say that, you know, I would say that there's degrees of cold calling. You could be calling someone out of the blue and call that a cold call. But if you have some connection to them, I was talking with somebody about this just the other day, that what would make it easier to call people? I have some connection to you. And if I have that connection, when I coach people and they say, I don't know what to do. What should I do next? How do I make sales? The first thing I would say is, I guarantee you that if I tell you to write down 10 people you could call right now that you already know, that either you could ask for a referral, or they might be interested in your services or your product, etc. You could come up with 10. If you start with those are cold, but they're not mean. You know, they're not. That's not the right word, but you know, they're not. Who are you? They know you. Start with those.
Right. Okay.
They're not icy cold.
Right, they're not icy cold.
I think we have time for one more question. I apologize because we had so many fabulous questions come through and we just don't have time to get to them all, but we're going to make sure that Ashley and Liz both share their contact information afterwards so that you can contact them directly to continue conversations, and also some other options for continuing the conversations. But here's this one last element, one last question, which I think both of you can probably speak to a little bit, which is, it's tied into the presentation that Liz initially gave, which is how can you overcome that fear component of being visible?
How do you overcome the fear component of anything? Is, first of all, you're aware that it's occurring. It's the number one step to any transformation, is you're aware of it. And then being in action is always think about some situation, you have a child and they're running out into the street and there's a car coming. You have a fear of getting hit by the car, but you have a much bigger concern about solving the problem, called getting that child and bringing them off of the street. You are so in action. So by getting into action, you are less focused on the problem and the fear and more focused on how am I going to solve this problem. So definitely getting into action will mitigate that.
Ashley, did you want to add one last thought on that?
Yeah, definitely. I second getting into action. That is fantastic advice. For me, I would say it's a couple things. I like to journal and work through things that way. And so I just write everything out on paper. And somehow, don't ask me how this works, but somehow when I start writing down fears and then start digging deeper into, like, why am I afraid of this? What's the worst that could happen? I peel back those layers, like, on paper, and somehow I always feel better after. So there's that. That's a tool. And then also having a support system, even just a couple people. We have this amazing community with Pepper Lane. Maybe buddy up with someone and have someone you can reach out to when you're having those doubtful moments, and just talking it through and having somebody else to be able to reflect yourself back to you and your business back to you and remind you how far you've come and how much you have to offer. Sometimes having another person share that with you is really important. Get out of your own head.
That is so true. It's so one of the main reasons we built the community the way that we did, and this actually ties things in nicely. It's 11:45. I do want to encourage everyone who's attending. If you are a member, of course, please come to a boost to let us help you talk through any challenges that you're having. Also, I do have at least one more boost in, I think maybe two more boosts in June on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. That focus on pricing. We did get a lot of questions about pricing, and I'm happy to talk through that with everybody, and your peers give really valuable advice there. And I also just want to turn over for one moment for Liz to tell us her website and where we can find her if you'd like to ask some more questions.
Yeah, I'm going to actually put it into the chat right now, lizwolfcoaching.com, because it's Wolf with an E. And I have on there, as I already mentioned, I have a free PDF that you can download that talks about overcoming 5 top fears of selling. So that may answer some more of your questions. There's also a link on my website to sign up for a free call with me. And there's so many unanswered questions that I'm seeing. Even there's also a Q&A. There's some stuff in there that we didn't get to. So I'm more than happy to talk with anyone if they have challenges around sales and you would like to set up a call. You could just find all of that on my website. And thank you so much for being here and for inviting me. It's been really fun.
Thank you, Liz. And Ashley, where can we find you in addition to your Pepperland site?
Sure. So my website is moveoverextroverts.com. And you can find me on Facebook too, just under my name, or Move Over Extroverts, either way. And yeah, I have a couple freebies that are on my website. One is an online course. I can also send you, if you want to shoot me your email addresses, I can send you the list of 80 something lead gen tools, strategies. So yeah, Facebook or moveoverextroverts.com.
Great. Thank you both so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise and your wisdom, and look forward to connecting with you and with everybody who attended today. We did record today's session, and we will be sending out the recording to everybody who registered. So thanks, everybody. Hope you have a great Wednesday, and talk with you all soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really amazing.